Again, so bear with me as we do what we normally do. Okay.
World Jam Global Radio. This is clarity. This is clarity.
Already did my time. I paid for my crime. Already did my time. I paid for my crime.
Right, I want to say a big good evening going out to each and every single one of you this evening. Coming to you live on World Jam Global Radio. This is Issues Today. My name is Kervin, Julien.
Already did my time. I paid.
Sorry for the delay, technical difficulties.
Already did.
It's just one of them things.
I paid for my crime.
But at least we're here now.
In the day.
Got some very special guests lined up to speak to you today. One of our all-time favorite friends. It was none other than Mr. Alex Salazar himself, former LA cop, private detective.
There was not a man I couldn't beat. I was good with my hands.
Another one of our dear friends, none other than Mr. Charlie Gatsby.
Over the street, I was getting money. Life was so sweet. Now things have changed. The whole game has been rearranged. I'm a changed man. Don't need no gun in my hand.
And we also have a special guest who was at the protest, the demonstration, whatever you want to call it, in Dallas on Thursday night when that absolutely worldwide attention drama of 11 police injured and 4 killed took place. Victor Estella Cruz is also with us, live from Dallas.
Already did my time. I paid for my crime.
Now, no matter what you're doing, no matter where you are, no matter who you are, no matter what's going on in your life, I want you to take 2 hours out of your time as we contemplate, as we discuss, as we unravel the circumstances that have taken place over the last couple of days, culminating in what we've seen over the last few hours.
Now sit back.
And so much so, a dear friend of mine, formerly from right here in Coventry, has been sent out by plane from London to Dallas to investigate how we managed to get to where we were to where we are. And I just hope that my friends out there in Dallas are taking very good care of Martin Baggett as we speak. And we should be having him on the show next week for him to unravel exactly what took place in his 48 hours out there in Dallas as we speak.
Already did my time, paid for my crime.
But 2 days ago, I woke up to some shocking news. Shocking videos being played all over
my time.
Social media.
My crime. Already did my time.
It showed 2 police officers over the body of a young black man.
Already did my time. I paid for my crime.
Who was fatally shot and killed.
My time. I paid for my crime.
And
I'm trying to get this felony off my back so I can get my.
I'm still left reeling,
like an ordinary,
angry, outraged,
to all
furious.
In statewide, worldwide, there was not a man I couldn't beat.
As to how another young life could have been taken at the hands of those whom we
life is so sweet. Now things have changed. The whole game is
believe are supposed to serve and protect.
Don't need no gun in my hand. It ain't about being no gangster. Life is too short to spend it all in jail. Trying to cope with this living hell. Already did my time. I paid for my crime. Already did my time. I paid for my crime. Already did my time. I paid for my crime. Already did my time. I paid for my crime. Already did my time. I paid for my crime.
I'm not sure if there's further developments taking place stateside as we speak, but I'm just getting a message saying that the topic has just got worse. Maybe my guest will be able to update us when we start.
My story to you and you. I had to repent. I must admit, I was doing all kinds.
So within 24 hours,
now sit back.
Another video popped up on social media with a young man driving a vehicle and his girlfriend streaming live as police shot him and watched him and allowed his girlfriend to watch him die. I don't know about you, but
alligator, especially all you haters.
That's some mixed up stuff going on right there.
Already did my time.
While there's all kinds of innuendos and suggestions and allegations taking place right here on Issues Today tonight
Going on right
with my guest Alex Salazar, Charlie Graspy, and Victor Estella Cruz. We're going to talk about what took place right here on Issues Today.
Trying to cope with this living hell.
So without no further ado, we're just gonna stop that and bring in my guest. Good evening, Alex Salazar.
Good evening, good afternoon here from Los Angeles to the United Kingdom and everyone else around the world who's listening on World Jam Global, my good friend Kervin.
Well, listen, Alex, just before we start talking about what we're talking about, inform our audience once again, especially those that might not have heard you before, who you are, what you're about, what you used to do, and what you're doing now.
Well, Kervin, I've been a private investigator now for approximately 17 years. I specialize in civil rights cases, criminal defense, and my whole goal is to find out the truth through my investigations. I do have a past as a police officer. When I became a police officer back in the early 90s, I had this dream that I was going to help people, save people, but instead I became indoctrinated into a system which brainwashed me, as it does many other young men and women who I believe come on with honorable intentions to do the job of law enforcement. Unfortunately, too, there is this thing that's called the code of silence, which takes over. And this is the whole crux of the matter of what we're talking about here, that there is just this really strange subculture that we have not dealt with here yet. And so that's precisely why I enjoy coming on your show to talk about these really deep issues, because we still have yet to understand and to get the root of the problems that exist.
Thank you very much. And we also have, again, another dear friend of ours. And it's always good to have you on the show. Hi, Charlie Graspy.
How you guys doing? Good to hear you, Alex. It's been a while.
Likewise here, my friend.
Okay, tell us a little bit about yourself, Charlie, before we go into this show.
Well, I mean, to put it in a nutshell, I'm a legal and political theorist and political scientist who has also been a highly active citizen, or activist, if you will, for most of my adult life, well, all of my adult life. And one area that I have been extremely involved in for almost 2 decades has been police misconduct, police misuse and abuse of force, and of course the more extreme aspect of police murder. And I was very active in the James Floyd case in New Mexico, and to put this on before Black Lives Matter emerged with the chokehold in New York City, and after that the Ferguson shooting event. But that's me in a nutshell, I guess.
Okay.
I just would say I've also been. I have been the victim of abuse of police power myself, leading almost to my own death.
Yeah, and we've done that on the show. We probably may well go into that slightly as we talk about your connections and your beliefs and opinions as we unravel this particular incident that we're dealing with. We also have with us a gentleman who was at the protest that took place in Dallas on Thursday night going into Friday morning. Victor Estella Cruz. Good evening, Victor.
Good evening. Good evening. It's all about me. I served my country. I was in the military for 16 years. I'm an Iraq OIF, Iraq war veteran, and that's me right there.
Okay. Well, Victor, we're going to be coming to you a little bit later in the show, but we're so glad and grateful that you could actually join us. We're going to be going into the events that took place in Dallas, and we're hopefully going to get your directive on that and a little bit of a commentary of what took place. But if at any time during the show you hear of anything that you feel like you would like to bring in a comment, then please feel free to join in the conversation. You might feel like you might want to throw your tuppence worth in as we go along. So feel free to join. It's great to have you on board. And we look forward to hearing exactly what you've got to say that will paint a picture to our listening audience as to what took place during that protest march and meeting before all hell broke loose, which is exactly what took place. All hell broke loose. Now, first and foremost, I want to go back to my first guest because the thing is, we had decided to do this show before the outbreak in Dallas. We had already had the conversation. As soon as this thing with Alton Sterling came up, my producer Linda was already on the phone. Whether she called Alex or Alex called her, I'm not sure which way it went. But the next thing I got from our co-producer and assistant Teresa was Linda speaking with Alex, and hopefully we're going to have him on the show. And I knew in my heart, because this thing with Alton Sterling shook me to the very core. And in fact, unbeknown to you guys out there stateside, over here in the UK, if you remember, Charlie and Alex, the last big incident that went international was the Laquan Johnson, when the Chief Justice ordered them to release the tape. And then that went worldwide news. That hit Sky, that hit BBC, and all of a sudden everybody in the UK was talking about Laquan Johnson and remembering we'd actually done that show about 2 weeks before. Again, nobody's been talking about Black Lives Matter or any Black Lives Matter related issues until Alton Sterling. And that went viral on social media as the videos and different formats of the videos and different sections of the videos were being released. But what I saw shook me to the very core, and there's absolutely nothing that the police are going to be able to say to explain any differently than what we saw. Is there, Alex?
No, I mean, they're going to try to put their spin on it, as they always do, of course. They like to come out and say, well, we're doing an investigation. This isn't going to be a cover-up. I mean, that's kind of the new mantra now. This is not going to be a cover-up. I mean, they actually have to say that, right, to be credible. But, I mean, it is what it is. The people have seen for their own eyes with these videos, and if it wasn't for the videos, then these crimes would still continue to be covered up by the police. This matter is no different than Eric Garner, okay? And I mean, it's just, like you said, it's very surreal here, Kervin.
You know, here's the thing. I just want to explain what took place on the video, especially for those that didn't see it, haven't seen it, and are just listening to the show because they followed the show anyway. But from what we get, and I don't know what took place before that, is you see one officer charge from where he was stood and literally rugby tackle Alton Sterling to the floor. He's then quickly turned over onto his face, onto his stomach, with his face into the ground. And you have one that's behind him putting handcuffs on him, and the other one kneels with his knee in his back. And while Alton's hands are behind his back, being handcuffed, yes, he's vociferous. He's making a lot of noise. He's angry. There's some swearing going on, and you can clearly hear him shouting. But he's not fighting. And you know, we all know the difference between resisting arrest, fighting, and just being frustrated at the fact that you're being handled this way. There's a big difference, in my opinion. And frustrated is what he looked like. He didn't look like he was fighting, because he looks like a big lad. Correct me if I'm wrong. Right? His size looked a reasonable size. But then the officer draws his weapon, holds it above Alton's head, and then seconds later, gunshots fire. Now, I'm absolutely bamboozled as to why the weapon had to be discharged. He was on his belly, face down, hands behind his back, being handcuffed. For what possible purpose would an officer have to discharge his weapon? Talk me through that, please, Alex.
Well, this is, again, I keep on mentioning these names just so we can go back and see that this has not happened before. This is history actually repeating itself. We look again at the story of Oscar Grant. Oscar Grant, of course, is a gentleman, individual who was shot on New Year's Eve, December 31st, 2009, going into the new year. And he was also handcuffed and basically on his stomach, as was Alvin Harris, and shot in the back. And so these scenarios continue to be repeated all over the place. And for whatever reason, these officers lose control of the situation, even though the person is handcuffed, right? They get shot in the back. And so there lies the problem, where they try to say, oh, he tried to reach for my gun, and they try to make it look like, oh, this was a life and death situation where there clearly wasn't any. And as you mentioned it, people can see that.
Okay. Now, here's the thing. When that officer shoots Alton Sterling, he doesn't draw his gun from the holster in which his police issue firearm is held. He draws it from his trouser leg. What's that about?
Well, that's the backup weapon. The backup weapon is a weapon that's supposed to be used if your main principal weapon is being taken away from you, or you're not able to get to it. That is your regular service weapon, revolver, 9mm, or whatever. And so here, I didn't really notice that myself. I thought he had used his regular service weapon, but that's only supposed to be used as a last resort. Here, there doesn't appear to have been a last resort situation where he was, fighting. They were in what they call a knockdown, drag-out fight. None of that appears to be apparent here in this scenario.
No, absolutely. Now, Charlie, what do we know of Alton Sterling? What do we know about him?
Well, let me answer that, and then I want to address some things that you raised back to Alex to further shed some light on some of those details. But the first point I would make is, it shouldn't matter what we knew or what the officers knew about Alton Sterling, regardless, because nothing he did when the police officers encountered him suggested any need to use any level of force, let alone deadly force. And his background has nothing to do with it. Now, what we know is he is a person who has not had any trouble with the law except as a youth. And I don't know what that was, and it's irrelevant. And we're talking 13, 14 years ago, who has been a regular presence at the place he was, doing what he was doing with the authorization of the store owner. And what he was doing was selling CDs. Now, we don't know whether the CDs, we can presume that this was copyright infringement, but it doesn't necessarily have to have been. And the police certainly didn't know. He could have been selling CDs of a friend's music in order to make some money to pay the bills for his kids. And what we know is that the police were given a call saying that someone was illegally selling CDs on the property and that there was a gun present. Not that he used a gun or anything like that. When the police arrived, they immediately took an approach that, bad guy there, we are the authority, we are going to command, and the moment he does not absolutely obey our commands in every way, shape, or form, we are going to deploy force. And that's why you see that initial tackle, which you call rugby style, which I think is a pretty accurate description, because what he was doing was questioning. He didn't pull out a gun. He didn't throw a rock. He didn't charge the officers. He said, "What am I doing?" You're not allowed in the officer's mind to even ask that question. Now, after that, when they have him pinned to the ground, you see him pull out the gun and hold it to his chest. And the other officer at some point says, he has a gun, as if he was shocked. They knew going in he would have had a gun in his pocket, more likely than not. This was not a shock. And he wasn't pulling his gun. He wasn't reaching. He couldn't even have the capacity to get near the gun. And then the officer shoots. And what you fail to really stress is he didn't shoot just once point blank in the chest, but he effectively, finished his magazine. He unloaded the gun. Bang, 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 bang. Same with the Minnesota incident. It wasn't one shot; it was multiple shots. Now, let's step back to what you said about resisting arrest. We all know what resisting arrest is, and I want to address this to Alex, because what we don't know is that the words resisting arrest mean something, but they are not the word. That's not the meaning that the law is any longer applying. Resisting an arrest in America has been reduced to failure to obey a lawful command. Then, even though lawful command should be a fairly high standard, it becomes prosecuted as anything an officer says during the exercise of their duties, even if their exercise of their duties is wrong, is a lawful command. So any time you even express vocally opposition to what's happening or even question, that is deemed resisting arrest, is often charged and is often successfully prosecuted. Now, maybe Alex can sort of try. It wasn't always that way, but it has become that way. So I'd like to give Alex a chance to sort of step in on that aspect.
Thank you, Charlie. Well, we've talked about this before on other shows, and as my good friend Cheryl Dorsey, who's also an LAPD colleague, retired, she speaks out heavily also against what's going on here. She describes it as these officers being drunken with power. And whenever someone, as you just mentioned, Charlie, even questions the officer behavior, asking them, hey, why are you stopping me? Automatically it becomes a contempt of cop issue. Oh, we got a troublemaker here. You're questioning me. I'm a police officer. I have a badge. I have a gun. I can do whatever the heck I want to do, and there's nothing you can do about it. So therein lies the problem, and I think that's perfect that you're addressing that there, Charlie.
Now, on the second aspect of this, so you have the mere questioning led to the tackle, and the police community and the law enforcement, the police culture in America sees that as a justifiable act by the officer, and the questioning unjustifiable. The next stage comes when he is on the ground and he doesn't turn to absolute jello. And of course, no human being would naturally turn to absolute jello when he has just been tackled for no reason out of the blue by two armed individuals aggressively and are forcing him violently to the ground and twisting his arm and twisting his back and pushing his head into the ground. It is a natural response to have some physical resistance. Now, it's not aggressive resistance, it's not forceful resistance, but it's not being absolute jello. And now here we have the second phase of the problem. Police see any act of, quote, resistance, and that goes from the vocal questioning to the non-jello physical rigidity of your body, to be, because semantically resistance tends to imply force. They then escalate that and elevate force to a different kind of force, and they say, well, your lack of compliance is resistance. Resistance is force, and we are justified to use equal or higher force to bring you into compliance. And even though in the rules, in every department, there's what's called a use of force continuum. And every use of force continuum in the nation would say everything those officers did was wrong. The police culture, a set of pseudo-academics, the unions and interest lobbies have reinterpreted the language to flip it on its head and to justify what you see. Now, I imagine when Alex, when you were trained in the academy, they did not advocate the way I just described it. They advocated it more according to the rules. But perhaps you have experienced what I think most officers are experiencing today, that the on-the-job training, the informal communications, the informal unwritten norms, then retranslates that all into that. So go ahead.
Yes, Charlie, let me just say something here. Out of the academy and had been trained in the correct manner of policing and using the use of force continuum, that is escalation and the de-escalation use of force. When I got out there on the street, the first thing my partner told me was, forget everything you learned in the police academy. I'm going to show you how it's really done. Back, no one's going to be there for you on the backups. You might get killed, and that was kind of the subtle threats given. So yes, you're absolutely right on the money again, Charlie.
Okay, 1 second. I want you guys to hear this, because there was a video that was released on social media online, but then there was another video, and listen to this. The video was filmed by Abdullah Maflahi, the owner of the convenience store. Sterling was reportedly selling CDs outside of before the police were called. Right? Moflahi says this: I was just in shock. He's from Yemen and he has owned the store since 2010. Moflahi says they shot him 3 times and rolled off of him. Then they shot him 3 more times. That's his gun they are taking out of his pocket. Now, this is Muflahi talking live on the video he's recording. So at no point prior to the police officers shooting Alton Sterling was his gun taken out, brought out, attempted to be got at. He didn't try and use it in defense of himself or to frighten or attack them. That's his gun they are taking out of his pocket. And Muflahi is saying this as the police are removing the gun from his right trouser pocket. Right? That's prior to them shooting him 3 times, rolling off him, and then shooting him a further 3 times. Now, what do you make of that picture, Alex?
You know, it's what it is here, Kervin. They cannot put the spin on this anymore. We know that Louisiana is one of those states that was part of the Confederacy. If we really go down into looking at the root of this whole issue, that's also where David Duke, the head of the KKK, is from. So you could very well have officers here that were just upset that here's this black guy making a little bit of change, and boom, you know, they actively selected him for murder, not thinking that this would ever be caught on tape.
Now, here's the thing. My family come from a little island in the Caribbean called St. Lucia. It's a lovely island. It's a beautiful island. I've been out there quite a few times. In the south of the island, the second capital of St. Lucia is a place called Vieux-Fort, where the former Prime Minister was situated and where my mother lives. And outside of a big supermarket, out of the boot of a car on the side of the street, next to a mobile food shop that sells rice and peas and jerk chicken, is a guy known internationally as Mr. CD. Now, every time I go to St. Lucia, I do not leave without a collection of CDs from, I don't even know what his real name is, but we all call him Mr. CD. And this guy, not only does he do copies of various types of CDs, but all the local artists on the island compile their own music and give it to him to sell so that they can promote themselves. So the local music in St. Lucia, for example, is Zouk or Soca, Creole, whichever way you want to call it. And so most of these bands, performers, singers who don't get a platform to be heard, who don't get a stage for them to perform on, put their music together and regularly travel down to Viewforts and give Mr. CD these CDs. And he sells them quite cheaply. And for these guys, it's just a little bit of pocket change. But more importantly, what it does do is it gets their music out there. Somebody else might play it, then it gets on a radio station somewhere, and then before you know it, it's on YouTube, and then from YouTube, a record company hears it, and then decides, let's go and find this guy, we might want to release it. And for a lot of these guys, that's Mr. CD is their starting point. And I know many vocalists, songwriters, singers, and performers who actually had their careers launched because Mr. CD sold their music onto somebody who came back to the island and said, I want to invest in that artist, that performer, that singer, that band or whatever. So I don't know anywhere where such response would have been given to something as trivial as an individual, and I mean trivial, as an individual selling CDs or DVDs on the street corner. But based on what Mr. Muflahi is saying, it sounds as if he didn't object to him selling on his premises. Have we heard anything to the contrary?
No, he has openly stated it since the night of the shooting that he knew the individual. He had permitted him on the property. He has never caused any trouble there, and that he was more than welcome to be there that night and every night prior. That he has stated consistently. And
have we any idea who the individual was who made the call to the police in the first place? Has that ever been brought forward?
I don't think so. But the interesting thing is, though, that is often being overlooked is the store owner did give a reason. He knew that Alton had a gun, and he stated that he knew why he had a gun. He said that there had been a spate of muggings in the recent past in the area, and that he was carrying the gun for self-defense.
Okay, because this almost runs parallel with John Crawford's, where we had the guy who was calling the 911 and talking about this guy who was in the Walmart with a firearm, which turned out to be a BB gun. But nonetheless, it was a call made by an individual, a white individual on this occasion, which culminated in John Crawford's death. Now, have the police is there any investigation? Is there any knowledge as to who made the call and why they might have made that call? You've told me why he might have had the weapon. That's fine. I accept that, and I don't think that was ever going to be a question for me. But my concern is what was provoking, what prompted, what was the motive and the agenda of the individual who called the police in the first place?
Well, that's not known yet, and it's certainly not something the Louisiana police are going to be investigating, because they actually have nothing to investigate themselves in any of this matter anyway. Once they shot and killed the individual, their investigation ceased, which also makes it highly problematic that the first thing the officers did was forcefully take from the store owner by putting him handcuffed in the backseat of their car and then going into his store and taking his surveillance video, not knowing that there was some cell phone video out there. But they immediately went and confiscated that without a warrant and without any justification, since they were to conduct no investigation.
And that's right. Mr. Muflahi says he deliberately, once he'd finished videoing, he put his phone in his pocket, so they didn't actually know that he'd been filming.
Right. I think the answers to your question are going to come now that the FBI is doing its investigation. That's certainly going to be something that I think we'll find out about, especially since it appears that it was, as the origin was a 911 call. Of course, the 911 call can be anonymous, but they should have the number it was called from. But these are answers. These are questions we don't have answers to yet. I do want to go back one step too and ask Alex another question about formal and informal training in police culture versus the law, because what we have in this case is, at worst, we have a petty criminal offense, a non-violent crime, by definition. What we have in the Minnesota case is something that's not even criminal. It is a traffic stop. It is at most a citation for a busted taillight. Now, police, part of the justification for even considering engaging force to conduct a stop or to conduct an arrest is the nature of the offense. And the law has long been such that if it is a non-violent crime, much less a mere traffic citation, there is no basis to even engage in force to have an arrest for that offense. Even if the person flees, you let them flee before you shoot them dead. But this is not the mentality and mindset that is being given to police officers with the on-the-job informal training, retraining, reprogramming, that you are owed deference, absolute deference, and if there's non-compliance, you have the authority to force compliance by whatever force you deem necessary. So, I'd like to go back and have Alex tell us about his formal training versus what happened once he got on the job, on that aspect, the context of the stop, and whether it's a non-violent crime, a petty offense, or even a traffic stop, and what he was taught in both aspects about how you approach that in terms of making an arrest or using force.
Yes, well, when we're taught in the academy, deferring back to that time period there, they try to teach you what's right and how you should do the police work once you're out there. There is such a thing as what they call the letter of the law, meaning the penal code sections that police officers are required to enforce all over the country. Then they talked about what they call the spirit of the law. For example, you pull someone over for a broken taillight, right? And you walk up to that person and they didn't realize that they had a broken taillight. You tell them, well, okay, that's fine. Take care of it. Have a nice day. Okay, but obviously that's not what we're seeing out here. We're seeing where the officer feels that he needs to be bowed down to. They have this arrogant attitude, and it just doesn't mesh with how policing is supposed to be. And that is to be a caring person, to have respect for the life of human beings, and most of all, trying to have a reverence for this law, for which they're given such powers to be able to have life and death over individuals.
Hear this. The United States, under the current legal standards set by the Supreme Court in Tennessee versus Ghana, authorizes officers to use deadly force in situations that would be deemed unnecessary and illegal under international law, and Baton Rouge Police Department's use of force policies aren't much better. The Baton Rouge Police Department use of force policy does not require officers to de-escalate situations when possible, or require officers to exhaust all other means before resorting to deadly force.
Let me step in on Tennessee v. Garner, because again, this police culture, police interest group, police union sort of industry has completely flipped that case on its head. It is a prominent United States Supreme Court case. The circumstances of that case were an individual with a shotgun in his yard was approached by police, and the police used deadly force. That case actually stated that the police were wrong in the use of deadly force, and that case even goes on to say, even if the individual were armed and fleeing the police, they should not use deadly force to stop him, and that only if the individual in their immediate acts are posing a real and credible immediate threat to life or significant harm, meaning the kind that either could lead to your loss of life or basically, loss of significant quality of life. I mean, I'm not talking about, a bump on the nose. I'm talking about serious harm. Only in those contexts does that law justify the use of force. And it has been flipped on its head.
Absolutely. Now watch this. I was just looking at this where a recent analysis of 81 cities, police union contracts found 72 of these cities. Out of 81 cities, police union contracts found 72 of these cities contain provisions that disqualify misconduct complaints, delay interrogations of officers, and limit disciplinary consequences or erase records of police misconduct. Now, how does that help build confidence in the local community when we're looking at statistics like that, Alex?
Well, it doesn't build confidence, of course. What it leads us to more cover-ups of these crimes committed by the police, of all people, who are supposed to be, helping and enforcing the law. And so, I mean, just this past year, the FBI started finally keeping statistics of the amounts of people that are killed. I mean, I find it highly incredulous that they wouldn't have done that just from the beginning. When I heard that they don't keep a tally of how many people are killed a year, I was like, oh my gosh, what a terrible thing. But yet here we have statistics on whales and, all kinds of scientific projects, but we don't know how many people, dogs and whatever, but here we don't know how many human beings are being killed. I mean, it's incredible. And so, what's behind all this, and I'm sure you and Charlie and everyone else will agree that knows what's going on, is behind all this is the white supremacy that appears to be shown in the United States.
Now, I'm glad you came across that point because
there's no doubt that that's a factor that's on the rise and no longer undercover. It's overt and it's frightening.
It's very overt, and it is extremely frightening to echo it, because I saw this type of hatred and anger when I was a police officer. My own father-in-law, and I've mentioned it on this show before, used to refer to African Americans as fun people. And for those of you that don't know what fun means, forgive me for what I'm about to say. And I don't say this to shock anyone, but this is how they referred to black people on the LAPD as fucked up niggers. And so when you have that kind of, back then overt, and now as Charlie correctly says, overt, I mean, it's out in the open. No one's hiding it anymore, because we got a person like Donald Trump and others who are really trying to, start what appears to be this race war to change things, to make, their whole story is, well, we need to get America back great to how it used to be. They're thinking 60s, 50s. Of course, we know what kind of America it was back then, a Leave It to Beaver type of, environment where you had the white family all perfect and they're, having dinner at the table. Meanwhile, they don't show any blacks, they don't show any Latinos or anything that really makes this country great to show the diversity. Instead, it's just the white, folk that is there in the picture. Fast forward to the 70s when they started making Dragnet, Adam 12. Again, they had the white officers, making it seem, that this is how it's supposed to be. We are now seeing white supremacy for the ugliness for what it truly is. And so, I mean, I believe that is where it's all coming from, and that these are the ugly, of this monster that we're trying to finally deal with to eradicate from our societies.
You know, some of the figures that we see is absolutely shocking. And the day after Alton's murder, hundreds of people turned up at the site, the location of his death, long before the outbreak in Dallas. But the night after he was shot, they turned up at the location where he was shot, protesting and making their voices heard. And that was a very, I suppose, a peaceful as demonstration as you could expect under the circumstances. But the huge amount that turned out in such a short space of time really took them by surprise. But the one thing that you didn't see in any of that was any police presence. Was there a reason for that, do you think, Alex?
I think there was, because they learned, well, first of all, I believe they were ashamed, knowing that they had, really effed up here big time, okay, that now the focus, just like Ferguson and all these other towns that have become household names, that theirs now was going to be the same. And so I believe that they learned from that, and not wanting to have more riots or killings or making it just a incendiary situation would have helped any at all. And so plus they also have, my understanding is a more progressive mayor, okay? Because usually the mayors stay quiet. They back the police chiefs. And so this was definitely very unique that the mayor has some cojones to basically say, hey, this was a racist, killing here. I think that gives him a little bit of credit for the problem.
I'm not sure how correct these statistics are, but there is. I've got a statistic, and I'm going to read it anyway, because it makes shocking reading. But I'm looking at a calendar of deaths by police. July the 1st, Alexis Mishtaut. July the 1st, Helmut Wiechowski. July the 1st, Stephen McQueen. I can't read this one. July the 2nd, something Williams. July the 2nd, Jonathan Justice. July the 3rd, Pedro Villanueva. July the 3rd, Raul Saavedra Vargas. July the 3rd, Shannon Labit. July the 4th, Anthony Nunes. July the 4th, Delron Small. July the 4th, Sydney Washington. July the 4th, unknown. July the 4th, William Patterson. July the 5th, Alton Sterling. July the 5th, Joshua Bolster. July the 5th, Melissa Ventura. July the 5th, Sam Newby. July the 6th, Philando Castile. July the 6th, unknown. July the 6th, unknown. July the 7th, Micah Johnson. July the 7th, unknown. July the 7th, unknown. July the 7th, Vincent Ramos. That's 24 people killed from July the 1st to July the 7th by police gunfire. 24.
And to make matters worse, Kervin, as Alex mentioned, that there's now a national effort to gather the data into a central national archive, but that data project is still based upon the voluntary submission of data by the individual police departments. It is not mandatory. It is not uniform, and it's often subject to spinning by the departments themselves into what categories they'll place things. But I think what you'll find is if you actually did a study of lists such as that, you notice you mentioned Johnson in there. Johnson is the shooter in Dallas. But so you would say that would be a justified use of force and death at the hands of law enforcement. But if you started to then expand it to that whole list, I think you'll not only find that a large percentage of those are not going to be justified uses of force, but you're going to be shocked to find out how many of those uses of force and abuses of force are coming from non-violent encounters and often traffic.
Okay. Let's just get it right. Let's just get this right.
Being used.
Let me just say this. Can you hear me, Charlie? We're losing your signal.
Yeah, I hear you.
Okay. I hope you guys can hear me. Let me just make this clear. You have several types of people that make the world go round. Not everybody's the same. We're all differently unique, right? And you have the type of person, when confronted by a police officer, will go, yes sir, yes sir, yes sir, yes sir, yes sir, yes sir, okay, yes sir, yes sir, I'm really, really sorry sir, yes sir, yes sir, yes sir, right? But then you're going to have the kind of guy who thinks to himself, every time you see me, you got something to say. Every time I'm driving past, you want to stop me. Every time I'm with my girlfriend, you want to be making fun at me and pointing the finger at me and reminding me of what I did 15 years ago. And you're going to have that kind of guy, right, who's going to be walking down the road, and today you're going to try and pick on him. And he ain't having it for various reasons, because you don't know what side of the bed an individual wakes up on any given day. And let me just say this. Even those normal, calm guys who would normally go, yes, sir, yes, sir, yes, sir, sorry, sir, yes, sir, what do you want me to do next, sir, right? You get that guy who wakes up in the wrong frame of mind on a given day and gets himself picked upon on the wrong time, and he's not going to take that. And when you're talking about officers who are picking on individuals who are not in the process of committing a crime, some people will take it less than others, and it's going to be like, what the heck? No, you're not pushing me around today, buddy. I don't care what uniform you wear, and I don't care about the fact that you got a gun around your waist. You are not pushing me around today. Now, that individual, there are far more of those creeping up nowadays because of the frustration that the community now has against police officers that willfully and wantingly bully their way around and take law into their own hands and deal with it in such an unprofessional manner, almost bringing the badge into disrepute. Right? These are officers that should not be wearing a protect and serve badge, but in fact are no different than the thugs that you'll meet up with who are selling crack on a street corner. They have the same attitude and the same mentality, and needs to be treated in exactly the same way as you treat any scum that was to come into your community and start behaving like he was some kind of a bad man, because that's how some of these police officers are behaving. But you get that police officer coming across or coming against an individual who's assertive, who's positive, strong-minded, and is not about to start bending and bending over for an officer who's trying to bully, because at the end of the day, sometimes we don't know how far these officers are going to go, and the last thing we think they're going to do is pull their gun out and kill us, right? Because that's not what you're not supposed to expect that. And this is the problem here. Far too many people are saying things like, well, why didn't they just do what he said? Why didn't he just do what he... We don't, that's not the norm. That's not supposed to be tolerated. You're not supposed to expect that to be the outcome on every confrontation you have with a police officer if you just happen to disagree with the way that he's coming at you. But the unfortunate thing that we're finding out in the world today is that appears to be the norm, because people are actually saying, well, why didn't he just obey him? Why didn't he just do what the guy said? Why didn't he just lay down on the ground and humiliate himself? There are some people that are not bending that way, and no matter how inconvenient some people might see it as too much, well, the guy would have been alive today had he been a bit more disciplined and had he just done what he was told. Then what we're saying is we're making allowances, we're compromising what's right, tolerating what's wrong because it's easier, and that don't make sense either. Surely it doesn't.
Right, and Kervin, really quick, if I can interject here, that the mentality of the police is you're going to go in one way or another. Okay, and I've seen some people who are a little bit more better in talking to the public and using psychology, because you do have a lot of mentally ill people that you encounter out there. However, these officers don't care about that. We saw that happen with Kelly Thomas, and as Charlie mentioned, James Boyd. These officers, they don't care. They lack empathy to have a heart, to help. Many of them have that mentality, well, I'm not a damn social worker. I came here to hook and book, to kick ass, take no names. They have this imagery of themselves, like in a lot of these police movies, that they're going to have fun, they're going to chase people, they're going to catch the bad guys, they're going to kill them, and they see themselves as glorified heroes. And so Charlie hit on, again, I love talking about you, Charlie, because you really do understand this subject matter pretty well, probably because you have been at the point where you have just been bullied to death by the police too, my friend. And I just got to say, that this man right here is a hero that you got here on this program with me. I admire you so much, Charlie, for you standing up as a white man for the black man and exposing law enforcement for what it is, my friend.
Absolutely.
But yes, it truly is a white supremacy bullying issue where these people think that they can do whatever the heck they want. And I know this, and they can't tell me, oh, Alex, you're full of shit. You don't know what you're talking about. You're crazy. I lived through it. I worked at that police station, Rampart Station, which was the impetus for the 2000 Academy Award-winning movie Training Day, in which Denzel also won Best Actor for playing a rogue cop thug that was based on a real true-life character on a guy that I worked with when I worked LAPD by the name of Rafael Perez. And so this is real, okay? And these people that say, oh, just lay down and act like an Uncle Tom, or as the Latinos would say, Tío Juan, and just do what you're told and have your civil rights violated, maybe have a gun planted on you, maybe have drugs planted on you, maybe just have the cops screw with you as they like to do with Charlie here, and everything's going to be fine. We get to shame you, we get to humiliate you, and there's nothing you can do about it.
And that's the mentality they have. But the point that I'm trying to make is they're coming across far more often now. Guys are just saying that we ain't taking that no more. We're not taking that from you no more. And
that's very scary because I was going to say that's very scary because America is creating this type of extremist. I mean, right now the focus is on the war on terror, the Middle East, and these incidents that keep on popping up here in the United States with people of Arab origin. But now they're also happening too with Americans, okay? And we're talking about military people here, people who have brains, people who are seeing the reality of what's happening. And so you're going to start to see more of these incidents where we create our own homegrown terrorists. I mean, forget about the Middle East. We got problems here in the United States. And until we get off our holy high horse, the arrogance of it all, that we think that we know it all, causing problems all over the world and causing problems here in little towns and cities across the land, then America is no longer going to be the most proudest country. We are going to become, something right there that we don't even want to think about or go to.
Absolutely. And you have to understand, Kervin, in America, the description what you went through about if you're constantly being harassed by the police, if they're constantly stopping you, if they're constantly asking you to stop, to submit, to pull out your driver's license, to do this, do that, which are dehumanizing acts, and particularly when you have done nothing wrong. But what is overlooked is that in minority communities, these are the day-to-day realities. The police are consciously looking to stop anyone as often as they can for simply being in that community, for simply looking as they do, because they're looking for a pretext to stop, because they think that if they stop enough people, they're going to find enough warrant violations. There's no reason to stop other than you think that if you can stop them, get them to give your license, even though they've done nothing wrong, you're going to find a number of people with warrant violations, which gives you a justification for arrest. This also means that you're stopping people who aren't. Yes, go ahead.
Right, Charlie, they call that good old police work, don't you know? They're out there trying to cause problems. And that's what I saw sometimes, where they would pull over people, families, and just start going through cars, ripping them apart, thinking that someone was hiding drugs, all maybe finding a little marijuana joint, and then arresting them after tearing up their car and humiliating the person. I mean, it's crazy where it's become. And again, the culture, this insular culture, because we all have different cultures. We belong to a culture right now as we speak, right? But then there's these subcultures, secret subcultures, where these officers, they all speak the same language. Even these so-called good cops that say, oh, I'm a good police officer, I don't do these things. Yeah, well, you know who the bullies are. Everyone knows who these bad cops are, who out there framing people, and then they want to act like they're just, fine. And so it's not the case, of course, and we need to try to change that.
Well, just the other day, right? I can say this happened about 2 days ago. My son had just bought not a brand new pickup, a used pickup, and he was driving here in Garland, Texas. And for no apparent reason, my son is a hard worker, and he was coming back from work, and he gets pulled over by a police officer. And he hadn't had the chance to clean out the car, and there was a small little metal box in the car underneath the seat. And I guess one of the officers smelled it, and he said to my son, I think there's marijuana in here. My son's not a smoker, a pot smoker, none of that. And they ended up taking him to jail, costing him $600 for a truck that he bought that had a box inside of it with nothing in it. Cost him $600 to get out.
Wow.
Coming home from work. That's ridiculous.
Going back in the 70s and the 80s, right here in the UK, we had what was called a standard procedure by the police. It was referred to as SUS. Don't know if you ever had it over there in the United States, but we had it over here in the UK for some years. And SUS stood for Stop and Search. And it was eventually outlawed because when they did their statistics, 99% of the people that were stopped and searched were black. Now, this SUS law, right, also had an extension on it, right? And what I mean by an extension, I think we've talked about it on the show before now, was basically a policeman could actually charge you with suspicion. So we had a law where the police could say they are charging you with suspicion of stealing a car, suspicion of shoplifting, suspicion of pickpocketing, suspicion of burglary. The other one that they had was loitering with intent to steal. Now, what these charges meant was a police officer could arrest you and take to court and say to the judge, in my mind, I think that this dude was about to commit a crime. And that was a charge that could get you put in prison. You had no defense against it. None. Because the police officer was saying, I think that this guy was stood in the bus queue, not just to catch a bus, but he was going to try and pick the pocket of the guy that was in the queue in front of him. And that was a SUS law. They would arrest you, put you in jail, you'd go to court, and you could quite easily find yourself found guilty and sentenced to 2 to 3 to 5 years for that kind of a charge. And this went on from the 70s right through to the 80s. And we rioted over here in the UK. We rioted in almost every black community in the UK. We rioted. And when I mean rioted, we turned over cars, we set them on fire, we created barricades and stuff. We created havoc. We eventually had those laws and those charges kind of overturned and thrown out. And we had at the time Liberty, which was the biggest defender of miscarriage of justice, which was right here in the UK. And they were supporting people who felt that they'd been wrongly convicted of a crime or wrongly charged of a crime. And that was a massive campaign that started off, which started challenging the very core of the infrastructure of the judicial system right here in the UK. And I'm thinking that you need to, out there in America, there needs to be some kind of revolution that challenges the core infrastructure of the judicial system out there, that turns it on its head. Because at the minute, it seems like the black guy is getting a very raw deal indeed. And for us over here in the UK, it's becoming more prominent now, because we're hearing so much more about it. And then you've got shows like this that are now going out. And no, we don't actually have a lot of media coverage on the stuff that goes out stateside. But social media puts a lot of it about, and it's being picked up that way. But we're sitting here, we're going, how on earth? And we really don't get it. How on earth is this being allowed, permitted to take place? Where's the president? Where's the judges? Where's the law enforcers? Where's the people that should be making right the wrongs? Where are they all? And we're gobsmacked here in the UK as to. Let me just say this, guys. Right? I know I'm going on a tangent, but I'm really frustrated on this. I was looking. I just gave you the counts for July, but it seems like the cops are actually on some sort of like league table, because in April, right? Stay with me, guys. In April, 80 were killed. In May, bear with me, it was 85 in May. In June, 94. It seems like it's a point system. 80, 85, 94. And already, we're only on the 7th of July, and we're already on 24. At this rate, they're going to hit the 100. At this rate, they're going to hit the 100 by their 4-week period. So, my question has to be, who's responsible for making the changes that will see a better system implemented in law enforcement in the United States of America that can make law enforcement officers feel safe to do their jobs, and at the same time have a community that believes in a law enforcement that is there to serve and protect the innocent and penalize the guilty? Because is that not what it's supposed to be about?
Well, Kervin, the simple answer is this situation is not going to change. It's only going to get worse unless and until there are aggressive prosecutions, just as aggressive as they use the prosecutorial power on ordinary citizens, aggressive prosecutions for the actual crimes of negligent homicide and murder in these cases, and successful prosecutions, not like what we see in Baltimore, but unless and until those prosecutions happen and police officers who kill unjustly and unnecessarily are going to prison for serious time for the serious offenses of negligent homicide and murder in whatever degree it may have been, this situation is not going to change. And that's not going to happen unless and until, A, the federal government steps in and doesn't seek just the civil rights laws, but finds a way to do those kind of prosecutions themselves. The law isn't written such right now that they can. That's part of the problem. And that's not likely going to happen until the people rise up strongly and firmly enough and consistently enough to put the pressure on for that change to happen. But until police officers are held at minimum to the same standard as an ordinary citizen, yet they should be held to a higher standard, but until they're subjected to that same standard that the law does apply to them, this is going to escalate.
Absolutely. Here's the thing. I am so fired up over what's going on with Alton Sterling. And before I even had a time to get over that, within a short space of time, I was sent another video by a friend of mine's out in Ohio. And it was a private message with a video. And he said, "Look at this. Happened about an hour ago." And I looked at this video, and and I could not believe what I was seeing. I was watching this video as this woman was streaming live on Facebook. Her blooded boyfriend sat beside her, Philando Castile. She was exchanging words with the officer while the officer still had the gun pointed at the bloodied, injured, and now what was clear to me, dying man, which must have been clear to him because he was closer than I was. But in part of that exchange, you heard the police's voice sounded like he was in panic. He had lost control. But I told him not to reach for it. I told him not to reach for it. That's how he was talking. And the girlfriend sounded more calm and collected than he was, and she retorted with, "But you told him to reach for his ID, and that's what he was reading." And then the officer is getting more panic and more frustrated. "Keep your hands where I can see him. Keep your hands where I can see him." And she's saying, "But my hands are down." And she had both her hands on her phone, and she was streaming this thing live on Facebook as this officer was hurling this tirade of panic. But the girlfriend was not allowed to tend to her boyfriend, who had been shot by this officer, who was bleeding out in the car, who was to eventually die. And the officer, having shot him, watch him sitting there, laying there injured, bleeding out and dying, did nothing. And at some point, he must have known that he wrongly shot a man who was... Because once she said, well, he was reaching for his ID, he's got his arm folded over, there's absolutely nothing he can do as he laid there, almost breathless. That was absolutely inhumane, how that officer stood there with his gun held over him and watched him die. Now, I don't know about anybody else, but that makes me sick to the pit of my stomach. And I'm not surprised that somebody was mad enough, or people were mad enough to take to the streets. And I'm not surprised that another group of individuals took it to a whole different level. I'm not saying it was right. I'm saying I'm not surprised. Because when you look at the inhumane way Alton Ellis was a Jamaican reggae singer, by the way. Alton Sterling and Philando Castile met their death as two individuals who were not in the process of committing a crime, but the way that they lost their lives at the hands of these brutal and senseless police, it's enough to make anybody take up arms and run to the streets.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. And I'm not for killing, let's just make that clear. No one wants to see anyone die, much less police officers or these innocent people. And there probably would be some people I would say that do want to see police officers die. But I mean, really, I don't think anyone does want to see that happen. However, when you see these killings continue unabated without any repercussions against these power mongering police officers, what else can you do? And you're going to have riots. There's going to be riots, and there's going to be more killings. And the politicians and the people, mostly the people, they have to pull their heads out of the sand and say, this has to stop. We can no longer ignore this. This has become, our nation's most, what I would call a national security issue now, where, we're going to start to see more killings, and it's going to be no more different than the Middle East, I keep saying.
Here's the thing. Do you think for 1 minute, had the national and local media shown as much outrage and interest in the deaths of Alton Sterling and Philando Castile at the time that they were killed, prior to the demonstrations and protests out in Dallas and everywhere else, do you think there's a possibility that it might not have escalated to the level that it did had they shown some sort of outrage coverage, given some sort of hope to the families, to the communities that that America was paying attention to this, and this was wrong?
That's an excellent question, Kervin, and I think that if they had done that, then we probably wouldn't have seen this anger lashing back there in Dallas, where this young man, I mean, he's just a kid, he's practically the age of my son, and you know, I don't think we would have seen this type of response. But now, you know, of course, the focus is on the police officers, that these were good men. And I mean, what about checking into their backgrounds, right? You know, how many of these guys that got killed, you know, killed themselves? How many of them had personnel complaints or issues here? I mean, we all have issues as human beings, but it always seems to be the big thing here. Well, let's look at what this black man was killed for. He's black, so he must have done something. Yeah. And so that appears to be the pervasive mentality of white America here in the United States, that, you know, if it's a black person, that life does not matter. And so, as stupid as it sounds that they had to come up with the slogan Black Lives Matter, they had to, because people just don't get it.
Yeah. And the funny thing is they still don't get it.
They still don't get it.
Look carefully at the Minnesota video, the Castile shooting. I mean, here you have an absolutely unjustifiable shooting, and an officer who knows he just did something seriously wrong, and he's panicking, and right. But his response, and the response of all the other officers there, is to escalate the problem by then treating her as a criminal.
Absolutely.
And barking or pointing the gun at her, demanding that she keep her on. Nobody threatened this officer in the first place, certainly not her, and yet keep your hands up, pointing the gun at her, get her out of the car, barking orders at her like she's a dog. Get out, on your knees, you know, walk backwards toward us, you know, on your knees, and handcuff her. That was all with 4 or 5 guns drawn.
Very similar to how Sandra Bland was treated.
Exactly.
And yet, what's also missing during that entire several-minute encounter with this escalation toward her is you don't have not only the moral response, but the legal duty that when you engage force, much less deadly force, the police have a legal obligation to have medical treatment given immediately to the victim.
And that's what I found so inhumane. Irrespective of my anger at another black man being shot innocently, yes, I'm outraged at that. But what outraged me even more was the fact that they did nothing. They left him to bleed out and die. Nothing to stem the flow of blood. I didn't hear no calling for first responders or an ambulance or paramedics. You heard none of that.
And the police are trained to give first aid too before the paramedics come.
Absolutely.
Not one of them.
But
not one of them attempted.
Nothing to stem the flow of blood. Nothing to no little. Tie around and save nothing. But here's the thing. We spoke about this before as well, Alex. And this continues to puzzle me. Because once again, you will continue to have this attitude of, but I was in fear of my life. Or I was in fear for my life. This common terminology which these officers continue to spurn out as a sad excuse for their reasons for killing innocent, armed and unarmed black people who are not posing an immediate threat. Now, my question still has to be, right? How many female officers have been cited or are in the same position as having to have discharged their weapons for being in fear of their lives when confronting the same standard of innocent, unlaw-breaking individuals who were not posing a threat.
Well, I think with females here, Kervin, they tend to be able to handle situations better than the men. That's been my personal experience. I think there's actually...
We're making excuses. The point still stands. If the male can use the terminology that I was in fear for or of my life, right, then surely a female who we regard to be as less powerful, not as physically strong. We tend to see females as emotionally stronger than us in a relationship, but not in a battle. Why are there not more women who are panicking when confronted by somebody they believe to be carrying a firearm that might or might not be violent or offensive? How come we're not seeing any female officers being lined up as culprits for this very same type of offense? And I'm puzzled.
Right. Well, again, going back to the female personality, mentality, most of them, they're able to talk to people and to talk them to jail. I used to see that phenomenon happen quite a bit, where you would see the big old macho cop, with the massive biceps, and he just got into a fight, and then here arrives a woman, and she tries to talk to the guy, and I saw this happen, of course, more than once, numerous times actually, where the problem was de-escalated merely just by talking to the person with respect as a human being. And ironically, yesterday, The Game and Snoop Dogg, I don't know if you guys saw that video there, they were able to get some respect from LAPD Chief Charlie Beck and the mayor when they went up there. And that was a big thing that they were just talking about. Hey, we need respect. We can't be treated like filthy human beings. And yeah, they gave the appearance that they cared, that they listened, but really, their conduct has been what has shown that they really are all about.
Here's the thing. If that being the case, why don't we just get rid of all the male officers and replace them with females?
You know what? That might be a start there to get more women, and yes, definitely to replace a lot of these testosterone steroid acting officers who think that they got to prove something by bullying people. I mean, we need to have a total paradigm shift in law enforcement, and that's what I'm advocating with a lot of these whistleblower police officers, active duty, former and retired cops that are coming out of the shadows now. Finally, we're getting together to band together against these police unions, the code of silence, and just this denial that has gone on for the ages. I mean, this has happened since the longest, and thank God for the internet. I mean, the internet has done, some good things along with some bad things too. But here, being able to expose things for what they are has given us the platform, Kervin, to really expose this and to talk about it, dissect it for what it really is.
Yeah, okay. Let's look at it this way now. So you have Alton Sterling murdered. There's outrage. The next day you have a whole group of people who go out to the location where he was killed, and they start protesting and making their voices heard. Within hours, you have Philando Castile, who is also murdered, and then. Once I'd seen that, and here's the funny thing, guys, right? My wife was working Thursday night, and so I worked Saturday, Sunday, Monday, and Tuesday and Wednesday night, finishing at the early hours, 5, 6 o'clock in the morning, 7 o'clock in the morning I finish, and then coming home. So Thursday night was my first night off in over 5 days, and because my wife was working nights, I got lazy and fell asleep on the settee. I was on the sofa watching TV. I think there was football on, and then I fell asleep. And I woke up in the early hours of the morning, and I just thought to myself, let me just see what's on the news, because the TV wasn't on the news channel, it was on something else. And I switched over to Sky, and I was met with this picture of this Dallas taking place right there, live, there and then, fire taking. And so I switched from Sky News and I switched to CNN. Because I knew if it was out in America, CNN would be giving me a broader, better coverage and an up-to-date, up-to-the-minute commentary on what was taking place. And I sat there and I was gobsmacked. Not surprised, but gobsmacked. Which leads me to our very next guest, who we're really so grateful that he was able to be patient. He's been sat there waiting for his moment to speak. We have Victor Stella Cruz, who was at the Dallas protest and around at the time of the shooting, etc. And the first thing good evening, Vic.
How you doing, Kervin?
I'm fine, thank you, sir. The first thing that I want to ask you is, when you set out that evening, and I'm going to go back to your reasons for going out on the street, but I just want to try and paint a picture. When you set out that evening, what was your purpose? What was your agenda? What was you looking for as an outcome?
Well, Kervin, that day started off as like a regular day, and I was going through social media, right? And I see this horrific, you could say, assassination on Facebook, right?
We call it an execution.
Execution, yes. And I would look at that, and I was just dumbfounded. I was like shocked, and I was like, wow. I'm not a protester, but I said, you know what? I have to do something. So shortly thereafter, I, take a shower and, get on the train and head on down to this protest. Well, being at the protest, everything was nice and fine. And, everybody had their little signs and everything. And I decided that I had to do something for this cause, because it's, in all reality, everything that I've seen, how they manhandle my son, and he's always getting profiled for whatever reason. I guess it's because he's got tattoos. I said I have to be a part of this. I'm just done. I'm fed up with it. Fed up with the system. I'm fed up with everything. How these, I say, not all cops, some of them to act like animals.
Yeah.
And how they treat us.
Absolutely.
And that's what made me go down to the protest. Freaking out. I mean, that's it.
Okay, so now, what I'd like you to do is paint a picture for us as to the mood in the heart of the demonstration. Once you got there into the protest, as they were going through the streets or stood where they were stood, what was the mood in general? What was the atmosphere like? What was it? Was they chanting? What was it like? Was it aggressive? Was they sounding confrontational?
There was a lot of, I could sense the hostility there, right? The atmosphere was hostile. Like you could tell the people were angry, seriously angry. And I never expected to see so many people. I thought it was just going to be just a few, but no, there were thousands of people at this protest. And you could tell the environment was, again, it was heavy. It was people were upset, very upset.
Okay, so there you are, in the middle of a demonstration. You've been prompted by what you've seen on social media. You get out there and you find out it is not just the few and the usual suspects, or just the hundreds that might have turned up, but in fact huge numbers had turned up.
Thousands.
Was you aware that there were simultaneous protests taking place in other cities around?
No, I wasn't. I was unaware.
So you was only aware of what was taking place in your locality. And I'm doing this for a purpose, because you see, the media have tried to paint a picture, especially over here in the UK, that this was some kind of orchestrated theme. And there has already been reports that Dallas wasn't the only place that came under fire. Yet I'm yet to hear of anywhere else that claims to have come under fire. I was also sent a video by those of you who have operated in the Black Lives Matter movements will be aware of Mikey Blue here, Mike Smith from Filming Cops, and he's out there in Portland, Oregon, and they were also out in unison, in unity, and in compassion for what had taken place with Alton Sterling and Philando Castile, and they were out demonstrating. And he's sent me a video. And here's the thing: you've got to see it to believe it. There's a guy with a video and somebody else, white guys, who are trying to infiltrate the march. That's what it looks like to me when I saw the video that Mikey sent me. And then the guy pulls a gun out on them. The guy pulls a gun out on the protesters. Now, what do you think happened next? I'm just asking you, Victor. What do you think?
I think he might have gotten his ass whipped. That's what I think.
That's what you'd expect, right? That's what you'd expect, right?
Correct.
Okay. Well, let me tell you, because the general public who have been hoodwinked into believing that all the protests and demonstrations was almost like a mass hysteria of military nonsense and people going out to get vengeance on the police. These guys gave this guy an opportunity to do two things: to put his gun away and to make his way safely out of the area unharmed.
Wow. Incredible.
These guys, some of the guys, you could see the guys were angry that he dared to pull a gun out on them. But it was like, no, hang on a minute. This guy looks frightened, is what one of them was saying. He just wants to get out of here, and he's afraid to turn his back because he thinks that you guys are going to do him something. That's the general consensus. So he's asking his friends to draw back, give this guy some room, give him room to put his gun away, and then give him room to leave freely, which is what they did. He was later arrested by the cops and or pulled over, taken away by the cops, who were aware of what he did. But the crowd, the demonstrators, the protesters, the Black Lives Matter folk did not harm him, attack him, or even abuse him. You want to get out of here, my friend? Please put your gun away. Don't point your gun at us. We're here to protest against the killing of our friend, our brother, whatever. Put your gun away and leave. Just leave. Leave. Now, is that the sound of... Because when people try to make out that there were simultaneous attacks, they're making it sound like this was an orchestrated thing by Black Lives Matter movement, right? To target police or white people or whatever. Turn it into a bit of a race war, right? But yet, the reality is far removed from that. Because these guys had an opportunity to get angry with this one guy because they've already filmed him. They filmed him pointing a gun at them. So you could now call on self-defense, right? If somebody points a gun at you and you retaliate by taking him down or taking him out, that could be considered self-defense because he's pulled a gun out and he's pointed it at you. Your life is now threatened. But they didn't. They got him to put his gun away and leave. That is not the mentality of people marching around the country in protest at the killing of Philando Castile and Alton Sterling. Now, I don't know if you got to see the video, Charlie or Alex. Charlie, I did send it to you. I tagged you in on it as I sent it. But it's a powerful statement, is it not?
Yes.
I haven't seen the video. I'm not sure the video you're talking about.
I did tag you on it. You should have had it. But don't worry, it doesn't matter. But that's what I've explained to you is exactly what took place. The guy pulls out the gun on the crowd, and instead of the crowd jumping him and whooping his backside, they ask him to put his gun away. Please don't, point your gun at us. Put your gun away and leave. We're not going to hurt you. Just leave. No one's going to hurt you.
Oh, this is the Portland protest video.
That's the one, Portland, Oregon, the one with Mikey Smith.
I haven't had a chance to study the video, but I do know the circumstances, and I do know. Yeah, I'm familiar with it.
So far from them trying to paint Black Lives Matter and all the protesting that was taking place throughout the country as some sort of a militant approach and an anarchic response.
Anti-police and all this. This is where they paint Black Lives Matter movement. It's anti-police.
Yeah, and that's traditionally and historically how they've done it too, Kervin and everyone else listening. When I was a police officer, they really used to demonize the NOI, the Nation of Islam, and basically say, oh, these guys, you got to watch out for them. They've been trained to take away police officers' weapons, and some of it was true, and a lot of it though was hype. Yes, they were trained, to fight and to protect themselves from police brutality and abuse, and to develop very highly disciplinary techniques. But the Nation of Islam was never a militant organization that set out to try to fight the police or to harm the police. They have always been there from the beginning to help out the people and to be there for the people. And when we look at what Mr. Farrakhan has done and his brave men and women who are out there in all these cities helping out the people, still to this day they're trying to demonize them.
Right. Now, here's the thing. At some point, right, while he was at this demonstration, Victor,
yes,
gunfire started. Did you hear any of that gunfire?
Oh yes, I was right there in the middle of it. The protest, it was almost around, I could say it was about 8:50. The protest was over around 9 o'clock, but it was ending, and all of a sudden it was like just gunfire. I mean, like, count at least 200 rounds going off. I mean, I was actually covered, and because I wanted to see where the gunfire was coming from. At that moment, my son takes off to look for his, but she was in the crowd somewhere, so he's looking for her. At that moment, I decided that I have to run after him. So when I finally see him and found him within the people that are running, I saw a lady on the floor, but I thought she was taking cover. Then I find out later she was one of the civilians that got shot. And within that chaos, I grabbed my son. I was like, let's get out of here. 2 shots come, like, I'm talking about inches of me, in which at that moment I took cover again, and another shot hit the metal pole, and where I was taking cover at that moment. And I also believe it ricocheted off the metal pole and went into and hit a police car that was like right next to me. At that point, I realized that the gunfire wasn't for the civilians; it was actually directed at the police. At that moment, so that's what I decided. I was like, "Look, I got to move," and just got out of the area.
Okay.
But it was horrific. It was a horrific feeling. What
was it? As the gunfire started to ring out around the place, what was the atmosphere like? Was there a lot of pandemonium? Was there screaming, shouting? Was people scattering? Describe the scene for me, Vic.
It was people. It was chaotic, pandemonium. I mean, think about thousands of people on the street running at you, and you don't know. There's no place to go. There's no place to hide. There's no place to take cover. People just basically barreling over you, and it was a very chaotic moment.
Here's the thing. From what you can make out, was the gunfire coming from one direction, one location, or was it coming from different places?
No, it was. I was trying to figure out by the sound of the firing going off. I was trying to figure out where was it coming from. But in a city, what I was getting was a lot of echo. All right, because it was echoing around all the buildings. Okay. So I did realize that the shooter must have been to my right, because I remember seeing 2 shots going to the ground, and that's when I decided, it was like, this guy's like on my right hand side, and that's when I figured out that he must have been in an elevated position, but I didn't want to look. I just needed to get out of the area. So, with all the adrenaline, the people running around and everything, it was just pandemonium.
So the shooter that was shooting from an elevated position, would you say that was the same shooter that we were later to see on all the news channels coming down by the pillar opposite the hotel?
You know what? I really can't comment on that because, if I'd say something that's not, correct, I'd be lying.
I'm just trying to wonder because for me, that kind of, I don't know what the building was, but that looked like one of those kind of multi-story car parks.
Well, you see, I don't know how this guy, you have to see, I believe there were more than one shooter, right? But there could have been just one. I'm not really sure, but in the sound of the gunfire, you can actually hear like two rifles going off at the same time. I mean, how can you just pop off 200?
Is that possible that it could have been an echo, or is it definitely two guns popping off?
You know what? It could possibly be echo. At the same time, it could have been like two shooters, but they're saying it's one.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, another protester, Shatamaya Taylor, was also shot. So therefore, if it had been anybody connected to the protest, is it not feasible to believe that they would have taken more care in where they were shooting and who they were aiming at, and they wouldn't have been so complacent and negligent in their discipline as to be shooting at the very protesters that they were supposed to have been aligned with? Does that make sense?
Yes, but again, I do believe that the shooter wasn't looking to shoot civilians.
No, I don't believe they were. I don't for 1 minute believe they were, but I just think that if they were involved with the protesters, if they were part of the protest, if they belonged with the group and the organizations that were protesting, they would have taken a bit more time as to where and how and what they were shooting at. That's my point.
Correct. Yes.
Well, Kervin,
I agree.
Kervin, the chief of police in Dallas has stated emphatically that in the communications between that shooter and the police, he stated clearly that while he's upset by the same scenario in America that the protesters were protesting, he was not acting as part of or with or in conjunction any group or movement. It was an act. He was doing so alone, and what I mean by alone doesn't necessarily mean only as one individual. It could be alone, a handful of individuals forming themselves as a group, but they were not doing this as part of any other group or protest.
And I just wanted to get that out without me saying it because that's how I saw it. Now, let's just get real here for a minute.
Yes.
Because irrespective of what anybody wants to say, or at the end of the day, 11 were shot or so, 5 were killed. 5 officers killed, and I don't think. As much as I'm angry, I'm never happy when any life is taken, and I personally would not indulge, embrace any form of protest or demonstration that would see itself responsible for taking lives. So I look at this quite seriously, as I see it, and these lives, irrespective of what their professions are, were lost, taken, cut short. Take away the fact that they were officers, they were people first. That's somebody's son, somebody's husband, somebody's brother, somebody's cousin, somebody's nephew, somebody's uncle. These people mattered to others, and that in itself was wrong. And surely we cannot support, encourage, endorse any form of protesting or demonstration that was going to start becoming an avenue and a window of opportunity for fanatics to jump on board and start killing in our name.
Absolutely.
Surely we can't go down that avenue. Now, bearing in mind that this is where we are, what happens next, Alex?
Well, we definitely need to talk about this and continue to talk about it as we've been doing here since you started this show and having this national dialogue everywhere else where this is going on. We can't dismiss it and say that, it's not my problem or that's happening in Louisiana or elsewhere, because this is happening all over. And what's going to happen here is you're going to have the police using this now as an excuse. Well, now it's the blacks against the whites. And there you do have the race war, which Trump and many of these other crazies are advocating to have here. And so that's the ultimate problem there, that, we could be looking the United States at another civil war. And we need to do something about this. I mean, I don't have the answers. I just know that, what I experienced as a Los Angeles police officer was not what I expected what it was going to be and what I was going to become. And so Charlie mentioned it several times, the word culture. The culture needs to be changed. People cannot think because someone has darker skin that it's black, red, brown, whatever, that they are an inferior human being. This hatred that has gone on for the longest needs to be destroyed once and for all. How we're going to do that, I don't know. Someone asked me the other day, how do we, spot these officers that are racist and to want to kill people? I said, have them write an essay, have them write about how they feel about racism. And if they can write something about it and it makes sense and it shows that they don't have a sociopathic heart, then they stay on as police officers. If you have a cop that doesn't want to write or talk about that, well, then it's obvious where they stand. One of my partners, actually one of my supervisors, a guy by the name of John Mutz, who used to be a captain on LAPD, he said that he can pick out, and I'm not saying that he's the racist whisperer or anything like that, but you can tell, you can look in these officers' eyes sometimes, and they don't just have to be white. They don't just have to be white. They can be black. They can, as we saw in the case with the gentleman in Minnesota, which when I saw that video, I thought it was fake. I thought it was phony at first, and then I was like, this cannot be happening. This is not real. This is not America. But you can tell, when someone is racist. You just look at their eyes, the angry look of hatred that they have there. And it's a whole lot more different than, an officer that walks up to someone, hey, how you doing? What's wrong? What's the problem today? What can I do to help you? There are officers out there like that, but they're way too far and few in between. And many times these so-called good officers that we talked about earlier, they know that there's problems, but they themselves become the troublemakers the moment that they begin to speak.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Now, what are the things that I'm going to want? I'm asking of you, Alex. You say we don't know what we're going to do next. I'm planning, and I've been requested, by the way, by Justin Powers to do a part 2 to this show next Saturday, if you're available.
Right on.
And what I'm looking to do on that particular show is also to have Uncle Bobby, Cephas Johnson, represent. And possibly Greg Greer, who are also quite strong in the movements. But I was looking to have a real depth look into what took place specifically in Dallas, and to see how we move forward as people. How do these leaders take it back to their communities? To bring about peace and at the same time still stand and fight for justice. So that's the plan for next week. If you're available, we'll book this now.
I'm definitely available. And ironically, me and Justin Powers, we were talking about this just 2 hours before the shit hit the fan in Dallas. We were saying, "Oh my God, what's going to happen?" Yeah, we were talking about it. Yeah. We were just kind of, we're both ex-cops, and we were like kind of biting our fingers. And I was telling them, I was depressed. I cried. I still cry when I think about this because, it's so sad. Yeah. It's so sad. Yeah, so many people are dying. And I'm sorry.
No, that's fine. I hear that. And the young and old, the people are dying, and lives are being lost. And it still seems to be propaganda and newsworthiness, but we're going to have you and Justin, and that's booked, definite. And if we can get Greg Greer and Cephas Johnson on the show next week as well, that's a slam dunk. All right. I just want to quickly switch to Victor now, before we lose him, who's patiently waited for most of the night just to get a couple of snippets. I just want to say we're so thankful that you were able to come on and share what you were able to share and paint that picture for us as to what was taking place right there in Dallas as the protest heated up. What do you see next? Because this thing that took place in Dallas will have a real effect on you. And remember, gentlemen, can we cut this short because we've only got a couple of minutes before we've got to come off the air. How do you see this impact in Dallas?
Right. Well, this is already showing right now in Georgia, where there's all these attacks that are occurring now, apparently scattered throughout the country. But this is to be expected because the federal government has not stepped in. The president of the United States has not stepped in. He has not addressed this. He's afraid to talk about this lest he be assassinated himself.
Well, Victor, I'd like to thank you once again for coming up and sharing that with us. Charlie, where do you see us going from here?
Well, this is not going to be an easy issue to solve, but I think it's time, long overdue, for a federal crime to exist whenever a crime is committed under the color of law. I don't mean the current civil rights violations, which is the only way the Department of Justice can now step in. I mean that any time a crime is committed, whether it be negligent homicide, murder, or battery, if it's committed under the color of law, I think it needs to be a federal offense prosecuted by the federal government with federal prison time, and take it out of the hands of the state courts because they are incapable of impartiality when it comes to law enforcement.
Well, Charlie, again, there is an invitation for you to come on board and fill a co-host spot alongside me on this show. If you're still ready to take that up, I look forward to hearing back from you. This is an open invitation that's coming out to you live on the Issues Today show, that you come and join us regularly on my show. And you take some time to think about that and let me know what you're going to do, because I'd really love to have you on board as my co-host. Alex,
okay, thanks, Kervin.
I'm going to leave the last word with you, Alex.
I just pray to God, who made us all very unique and different, Kervin and all my hosts here today, or the co-people, that we can come together as we're doing right now to look at this situation, from a much higher perspective, where we can finally, come to terms with our differences and just to, look at one another for the beautiful people that we are. I'm saddened, like I said, by all of this because, I know what happens. I know that the people aren't crazy. People like Sandra Bland, who died, one of my cases, Andy Lopez, a 13-year-old who was executed basically on the spot. I mean, none of these are aberrations, as Chief Daryl Gates said, of Rodney King, the first case that was ever videotaped. This has gone on for the ages. And in my work, I've been doing this for like about 17 years now in the private sector. I've come to this point in time in my life where, you know, it doesn't matter anymore. My life, you know, I feel that I have given it to this cause, to this movement. I don't try to talk about what I do because it's not about me. You know, what this is about is that these problems still continue on, and I have specialized knowledge in what's happening. So if we can come together and, like I said, stop a lot of this infighting within the movement that's going on, you know, we can accomplish so much. And I believe that, you know, with us all working together here, if we can do that, we can definitely fulfill that dream that Dr. King and so many other of our beloved martyrs, you know, have fought for and died.
Once again, Alex, I want to thank you for your time. We look forward to being back here next week, where we're going to be looking at and bearing in mind there's going to be a lot to unravel over the next few days. I'm predicting unrest in several cities around the States. I've even had messages from people who are asking me what's happening as far as Black Lives Matter here in the UK. There are people that are very angry about the recent events that have taken place on your side of the water. So next Saturday, we'll be back at our normal time, 6 p.m., and that's 1 p.m. EST, and I suppose is that 10 o'clock Pacific, whatever. But yeah, 2 hours earlier, we're back to our normal time. I'm not at work next Saturday, so I'll be ready and I'll be there early. So Alex, Linda will be in touch to confirm and beef up everything that we're doing on Saturday. I want to thank all of you guys for coming on the show tonight and just being as brutally honest as you've been. It's been a fantastic show, and we look forward to being with you again. Same time, same place. Issues Today on World Jam Global Radio. This is Kervin Julien saying thank you very much. We're out of here.
Thank you for having me.
Bye.
World Jam Global Radio. This is clarity.
Already did my time.
I want to thank each and every one of you for joining the show.
Already did.
We are going to be back next Saturday at our normal time on the GMT 6 p.m.
Already did my time. I paid for my crime.
1 p.m. EST.
Already did my time.
10 a.m. Pacific.
Already did my.
We're going to have Alex Salazar again. Justin Powers. I've spoken to Greg Greer. He's available. We're just waiting for confirmation of Uncle Bobby, Cephas Johnson.
The system, it was all about survival. It was.
And if Charlie Graspy accepts our offer, we'll have Charlie on board too.
Stay in school. I learned my lessons in this.
But as things unravel this week,
I couldn't beat. I was good with my hands.
We're looking to tie up some loose ends.
I was swimming in women.
And delve into what really took place in Dallas as the news starts to unfold, as the evidence begins to be presented, and as the media starts going frenzied, so to speak.
Trying to cope with this living hell.
I want to take the time out to thank my producers, Linda Sue, and a special shout out to Teresa, who's held the fort while Linda's been without a computer most of the week.
Already did my time. I paid for my crime.
Got a fantastic production team, one that I'm proud to work with. I call them family. We'll be back next Saturday, 6 o'clock. We're out of here. Thank you all.
I was a drug dealer, sold more drugs than Superfly, but I never got home.
World Jam Global Radio. This is clarity.
That's why I'm telling my story to you and you. I had to repent. I must admit, I was doing all kind of stupid shit. Now sit back and think it over since I've gotten older. The life I used to live, I wouldn't do it again. I was young and dumb, my brain.
Special guest, Alex Salazar.
Me and Billy the Kid had a lot in
Charlie Graspy.
Terminator, much meaner than
and Victor Estella Cruz.
Chew you up and spit you out.
Big thank you from the Issues Today and World Jam Global Radio family.
The opening statements are going on right now. He could be.
I think I can quite rightly say that was an awesome show.
Already did my time, paid for my crime.
I just hope that you, each and every single one of you, got something out of that. Got an understanding as to why the feelings are running so high, blood pressure and temperatures, why the blood is boiling and his anger spilling out onto the streets of the United States of America. Time for change.
Time, I paid for my crime.
Time for change.
Already did my time. I paid for my crime. I'm trying to get this felony off my back so I can get my life on track and have the right to vote and live like an ordinary citizen again. This is my message to all of my friends in the pen, statewide, worldwide.
World Jam Global Radio, this is clarity.
My hands and very quick on my feet. I was swimming in women. I had girls all over the street. I was getting money. Life was so sweet. Now things have changed.
World Jam Global Radio, this is clarity.
Change, man. Don't need no gun in my
Are you ready? Are you ready?
It's time for your new DJ here on World Jam Global Radio. As you know, World Jam Global DJs transmit from around the world. All viewers, please wait 30 seconds after this transmission. Then press play for your new DJ.
World Jam Global Radio, this is clarity.